Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive. My name is Taghi Amirani, and I'm one of the curators here. We're really delighted to be showing COUP 53. So it's had a little history with us. First, we opened with it in the theater, and I think we got it on the screen once, and maybe twice, and then the lockdown happened, so then we had a run with it streaming online. And now we're very happy to have it back in the theater and as the final program in our series, Afterimage, Walter Murch in Conversation. It's been an incredible honor and delight to have Walter Murch as our guest for what has already happened 2 wonderful evenings. Of course, for his incredible insights, but also for the kind of organic and full view he brings to looking at cinema, which comes from the fact that he works on sound and editing, and on this film also on writing, but also the way that he thinks about film across all of its different material elements. So I think any of you who've been at either of the other programs have just seen just what a benefit we have from the way he speaks about cinema. If you were here for Apocalypse Now, for example, through the conversation, we learned how he shifted sound work from what you might call piecework to something that was more like how an orchestra would be worked on, where you work on a piece all the way across the film, an element of the sound work. Really fascinating. Also, a conversation touched on like voiceover was in the film, then it was taken out by the request of the director, and then it was brought back in the film, and how that happened through conversations and thinking about what would make the film as a whole work. Those are just 2 examples, and you'll see and hear your own tonight. I also wanted to mention that both Apocalypse Now and The Conversation had to be structured, in one case, from too much footage, and in the other case from unanticipated less footage than was planned for. So that was another very fascinating way to hear Murch talk about how he resolved those issues, as you would expect through editing, but also often with sound solutions. Well, in both senses of the words, they were very sound solutions, but they were based on sound. So with COUP 53, we will be focusing, the conversation will be focusing on editing, which Murch was involved with on all the films in this series, but also he, as I mentioned at the beginning, has a writing credit as well for COUP 53. He will be joined in conversation with Mark Danner after the film. Some of you know Mark Danner because he has taught at UC Berkeley as well as on the opposite coast at Bard College. He's reported on wars, political violence around the world for the last 3 decades, often for really in-depth, wonderful pieces in the New York Review of Books, but also he is the author of 6 books of his own. And then a surprise in addition, some of you already know, we're delighted that the director of COUP 53 is here, Taghi Amirani. So he will be able to introduce the program, and then we'll go into the film and hope that all of you will stay for the conversation afterwards. I also, before I bring up Taghi, want to thank Susan Kanzi, who is the film sponsor for this entire series. She has sponsored it in memory of Kevin Kanzi, who many of you know was our former director of the museum, and who just really relished this type of programming, where you learn by both listening and looking and engaging in conversation. So I'm glad that you all took this moment to thank her. But now it's a pleasure to introduce Taghi Amirani to all of you.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Exactly a year ago, in November 2020, the film you're about to see was fighting for its survival in a cinematic and political intensive care. My life's work, personal and professional, a huge commitment of creative and financial investment was about to disappear into oblivion. The fact that you're seeing this film here tonight is a miracle, and Mark and Walter will go into some of the details of what really happened. The other great miracle is the fact that Walter Murch agreed to work with me on this film. This has been the biggest gift from the gods of cinema to a newbie filmmaker. And I know Walter, if he was here, said, oh, that's just director's hyperbole and BS. But Walter Murch is throughout every single frame of this film. It is the most amazing experience I've had as a filmmaker to have this 4-year experience of working on this film. And the other miracle is the fact that Walter only came on this film because Taghi Murch made it happen. His beautiful wife was here. So big thank you for Taghi. While I'm on a roll thanking the Murches, young Walter Murch Jr. was hosting me at the farm on endless trips when I came to raise money for COUP 53. Almost all the budget for COUP 53 came from the Bay Area. So COUP 53 has just come back home, really. And the final wonderful thing is that when we had our world premiere at Telluride, it was Mark Danner who gave us the most amazing introduction and Q&A at the world premiere in Telluride. And so it's very appropriate that he's back here to pick up the pieces of what happened since. And with that, enjoy the film and stay behind, ask questions. We love the people who ask tough questions. And I have a DVD that will be signed for what we think is the best question.
For those of you who are joining us for the first time, it's my pleasure to welcome Walter Murch. And to introduce Mark Danner.
My God. I had a quote running through my mind throughout that astonishing movie. I'm teaching a course on Faulkner, and Faulkner's most famous quote is, the past is never dead. It's not even past. And I can't think of another film. I mean, this may as well be the epigraph to this film. I can't think of another film that so immerses you in history, but at the same time convinces you that history is all around us. Not only do we have the reverberations, the historical reverberations from this coup that directly concern the last 50 years of American foreign policy, and especially the last 20 years, not only do they directly concern the reverberations of covert actions around the world that was shown in that brilliant montage of files from various coup placers from Guatemala to Indonesia to Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, etc. But we are immersed, it seems to me, in history by the fact that it determines what we learn and what we know. And one aspect of this movie that I find fascinating is the quest for information and the limitation of information goes right up to the present, right up to those pages with the chunks cut out of them. And in fact, beyond the present of the film, and we'll talk about that during this discussion, that the controversy is still going on about what happened, about why Norman Derbyshire disappeared from the original film in the 80s, what the status of that interview was. History is still being contested all around us. And I know of no film, no historical document that proves that so well. So I think I'd like to begin by asking Walter, at what time, when, during the process of making this film, did it, in a sense, transform itself from a film about a historical event to how we remember a historical event and who gets to decide what history actually is.
Yes, speaking of history, I just also want to thank the PFA for this series. It's been a great, enjoyable review for me. The first film that we showed 2 weeks ago was the first film that I edited 49 years ago, which was The Conversation, and COUP 53 is the last film I've edited just right up until about a year ago. We were still working on it. Well, to answer your question, it definitely emerged. This is a film whose genesis was, as Taghi mentioned, in 2009, when Obama was president, when the deal with the Iranians was in place or about to be in place. And when I joined the project, that was still the case. And the mood that we felt making the film was, for so long, Iranian-US relations were bad. Now that they're getting better, you might like to know why they were bad for so long. But of course, in 2016, 2017, that took a left turn, and with Trump in office, things did what in the United Kingdom they call a handbrake turn, a violent turn to where it had been. So, and that paralleled our making of the film, which was very organic. There was no established screenplay to begin with, other than let's make a film about what happened and hope that we make some discoveries. And discoveries we made. As you see, these were made during the making of the film. In other words, we didn't make these discoveries and then make the film. We set out to make, originally Taghi's idea was kind of 4 days of the coup, like 3 days of the Condor. What happened on each day, with a little lead-in and a little summary at the end. But as organic things will do, the film itself began to transform itself. And very specifically with the discovery that you see in the film of the emergence of Norman Derbyshire, whom I certainly wasn't aware of to begin with. I knew something about Mossadegh, I knew something about the coup, and Taghi knew a tiny bit about Derbyshire. He was like an annotation, the co-writer along with Donald Wilbur. Yes, thank you. But so he really emerged like the creature from the Black Lagoon to assume a more and more commanding presence in the film, specifically because of his commanding presence as the co-author and signer of checks and the controller of the events during the actual coup itself.
You decided to give him, in effect, a lot of screen time. And you clearly, you and Taghi made a decision that the telling of history and, in a sense, the creating of history was going to be a major theme of the film itself. How did that decision come about? To essentially make it not only the story of the coup, but the story of the emergence of this secret that had been, the important thing about it is it had been suppressed, which seems to me is critical to the film.
Yeah, to answer that question also, the original plan was that Taghi would not be in the film, that it would be a fairly cut and dried summary of the events. And when I saw the dailies, which were shot early, the raw material of Taghi at the National Security Archive, looking at that drawer of documents, realizing that the destiny of his country and the destiny of his family and him was contained in that drawer. It was such a riveting human moment that when he came back to London, I thought, I told him, Taghi, you've got to be in the film. Partly because this is such a contentious subject. It's a four-sided triangle of events and partisans from the ex-Tudeh members who are now mostly in what used to be East Germany, ex-communists, to the royalists who mostly live in Los Angeles in exile, to the nationalists, and to as many Iranians as there are. Everyone has an opinion about it. So it was impossible for us to make a voice of God story. This is what happened, because that would immediately raise the question of, well, who's telling us this? And so because Taghi is a dual national, he's an Iranian citizen, but also a British citizen, he's ideally positioned to tell the story because, as you can see from the film, he has access to people in Iran who were personally involved with Mossadegh, like Musa Iran, the head of security. And on the other hand, people like Lord Owen, who was head of MI6 in 1979, up to 1979, before the Thatcher government came in. So, I can't think of anyone more perfectly positioned who understands both countries and also has access to people within both countries.
When you say that you couldn't do a film from the voice of God point of view, my mind goes back to these other two evenings that have been so remarkable that we've spent here looking at the conversation and then Apocalypse Now. And it seems to me that is, Kathy alluded to this at the beginning, that's a theme of these three films. The fact, the first film, there's a struggle over the basic information of what is heard and what isn't heard. The second film struggles between the official story of Vietnam and the story of Kurtz, essentially. And this film, we thought we knew history about the coup, and it completely breaks down what we knew and shows why it's different than what we knew. We see it in each of these films.
Yeah, that was also a challenge from the beginning because we knew there are people who know the story of the coup, but many people look at this film and say, I had no idea about this. So the film had to find a sweet spot between people who didn't know anything about it, and yet we had to tell a story that didn't overwhelm them with too much information. On the other hand, it's very dense in places, but we also had to make a film that, for people who did know about the coup, showed them something that they didn't know before. And that's principally in the emergence of the Norman Derbyshire character, but also the revelations from the documentary material about, here in this one film, you, by luck and chance and hard work and persistence on Taghi's part, you have Norman Derbyshire, who ordered the kidnapping, torture, and assassination of Afterimage, the Iranian general. And here we also have material by the man who would have committed it, that murder, except that he had second doubts about it. That those were when we had our scene boards up that you see in the film, those little colored squares, each one representing a scene, there was one which was X, which is the mystery that we will hopefully discover in the making of the film, and that's certainly, we certainly did get our X.
I have to say that seeing the film again, one of the delights of the film is the incredible characters throughout. The British Secret Service are just, they're out of Monty Python. They're out of some caricature. They're quite extraordinary. And you really get this granular feeling, at least I do, for how foreign policy is made and who are the men, almost entirely men, who make it. And, I was struck by the fact that so many of the interviews you used are outtakes. That is, they weren't used by your colleagues 40 years before, or almost 40 years before. Were you a little stunned when you looked through these tapes?
Yes, that was it was a goldmine of exactly what you're talking about, not only in terms of fleshing out exactly the detail of step by step what happened, but yes, the faces and the voices and the attitudes are out of central casting. And it makes you, the End of Empire program from which they were taken was a Granada ITV production. It was not BBC, it was a rival channel. This 14-part series of the End of Empire, which was dealing with this idea of the identity of the British nation. Now the empire is over. How did it happen, and how do we now redefine ourselves? Nonetheless, the program had to fit within the hour slot of a commercial station, which really means 52 minutes, and there's only so much you can put in there. Nonetheless, looking at some of those outtakes, you realize they really did hold back, and most notably in the testimony of Norman Derbyshire and Stephen Meade, his CIA counterpart, neither of whom appear in the finished film, but also all of the more minor characters who add so much color and texture to it, and confront things like who is a wog and who is not even a wog, So it's just it's amazing.
I can't believe that they didn't use Stephen Meade. That seems completely inexplicable. I mean, even if you believe that the Derbyshire was never filmed, Meade seemed to be an incredible interview. Yeah. I can't believe they didn't use that.
Well, Meade. This is what you see here in this film is the only time Meade ever gave an on-camera interview. Not before and not since, and not in End of Empire. So we resurrected him. And as you see from the film, Meade and Derbyshire were a tag team, even to the extent of being romantically involved with the Shah's sister, this CIA operative, Stephen Meade. And they were on a first-name basis with each other. It's Steve and Norman. And not only that, Meade was sent by Eisenhower immediately after the coup to help set up SAVAK. So you're looking at the man who set up the security service that did so much damage during the 25 years of the Shah's rule that it precipitated the revolution that was then seized by the mullahs in the Islamic Republic.
And all on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
How is the decision made, first of all, to have an actor read the Derbyshire material, and secondly, to cast Ralph Fiennes?
We did live in hope, as Taghi said, that we were eventually going to find the film, or at least the tape. But film schedules being what they were, even though this was a long schedule, we never found it. And at a certain point, you have to say, let's commit to fleshing out this amazing interview. End of Empire have gone public since this film was released, and they have certified the authenticity of that transcript, that a recording was made of Derbyshire, and that the transcript that you see, which runs fully to 14 pages, is a semicolon accurate representation of what Derbyshire said. So the question is, this is an amazing document. How do you present it? Well, one way is to hire an actor, a voice actor, to read it as we look at the text. the next idea was to get an actor who had some visibility, a name actor rather than just a voice actor. And we considered, well, it could be this, it could be that. And we were coming back from lunch one day, and I suddenly remembered Ralph Fiennes, who I had worked with on English Patient. And I thought, he's perfect for this. And I mentioned it to Taghi, and that immediately triggered Taghi's idea of not only getting Rafe. Originally, we were going to shoot it in the sound studio with him with headphones on, you know. But no, let's shoot it in the Savoy Hotel where these interviews took place. And so one thing led to another, and we approached Rafe, who was preparing to be Mark Antony in Shakespeare's Cleopatra. Mark Antony in Cleopatra, the beard that he's wearing is his Mark Antony beard. And we went to the National Theater, which actually is right across the river from the Savoy Hotel. You can see it in some of the shots. Showed him the clips, showed him the interview with Allison, and showed him some of the outtakes of these types. And he immediately seized on those personalities, and he said, I know these people, not individually, but they are my parents' generation, and I grew up with these people in Suffolk. And so he immediately got it and was willing to do it. It was just a question of schedule, because as you can imagine, he also plays M in the James Bond sequence. So he is Mark Antony, he's M, he's Norman Derbyshire, and many, many other things as well. And eventually, thankfully, to my wife's intervention, Aggie said, why don't we go and see Mark Antony, the play, and maybe we'll go backstage and talk to Rafe afterwards, which we did, and he was touched and moved at many things, including my wife's beauty, and
Aggie to the rescue
shortly
again.
thereafter, he said, yes, let's do it on, I forget the date, October 23rd or something of 2018.
It's really quite remarkable to see him not acting and then see him acting. There's a quite striking transformation. That's one of the, again, seeing the film again, it's one of the treasures of the film. I wanted to ask you now, as an editor, you've kind of put yourself in the position of, to some degree, a forensic detective in parts of this movie. And we're getting now to the controversial, I mean, I should say, perhaps somewhat like Apocalypse Now, this film has continued to evolve since it's been finished, partly because of the enormous controversy it's caused in the United Kingdom, including threatened lawsuits and various other things. And I wonder if you could get us into this by talking a little bit about the evidence you found for the fact, that seems to suggest that he was filmed, that Derbyshire was filmed.
Yeah, I will. I think we've been talking before going on whether we should show a certain clip, and at watching the film, I've decided that we should show it, just because the faces are so familiar. So I'd like the projectionist to thread up the short, 4-minute clip. As Mark said, there is controversy about this. The fundamental problem is that for reasons that we historians don't really know, the British will not admit that they were involved in this. So the fact that here's a film with an MI6 agent who not only says that he signed the checks, that he co-authored the coup itself, that he speaks disparagingly about the head of MI6 at the time, and who ordered the kidnapping, torture, and assassination of the Iranian general is toxic to a certain level in the British government. And there have been attempts shielded by certain other things, which you'll see in a moment, to do what is possible to put a broomstick through the spokes of this film and deny it distribution. And so if we can run that clip, this is the makers of End of Empire in January of this year, in advance of the awards ceremonies in Britain and in the United States, made a short film of which you're going to see excerpts attacking the film for its lies, the fabrications that we supposedly made. And they were successful in the fact that even though we qualified in both academies for 6 events, we received no nominations, and we still don't have official distribution. We did distribute the film ourselves in August of 2020, in the middle of COVID, by using links with dark theaters, temporarily dark theaters, who would sponsor video on demand. And we split the ticket price with 110 theaters in the United States, Great Britain, Ireland, and Canada. And it got fantastic reviews. This film is one of only 123 films in the history of cinema to get 44 positive reviews and not a single negative review from all of the mainstream papers, both in the United States and in Great Britain and Canada and Ireland. And I think this scared the powers that be, whoever they are. And it was at that point that Taghi and I received letters threatening us with a lawsuit for defamation, that they claimed that this is the End of Empire team. Remember, this is a film made 35 years previously, 1 episode of a 52-minute film of a 14-part series. And here we are in 2020, and this film is being threatened with a defamation lawsuit to blacken our reputation. The beef that they have with it, to boil it down, is that there are people interviewed in this film who seem to imply that that Derbyshire was in a version of End of Empire at one point and then was removed. And there's lots of ancillary evidence to at least question that. So let's run that clip. This is available on YouTube, by the way.
The Derbyshire transcript is of a research interview which we conducted, we think, in about December 1982. As soon as we saw the film, we contacted Taghi to say, look, you've included a huge number of errors. There is no evidence of us having filmed Derbyshire. And we sent him a big document with a whole sheaf of evidence and documents as to why this was wrong.
I have to stop the film here to say that we never received anything from Allison and Co. proving the points that they're making.
And we asked him to correct the film.
This they certainly did. They sent us 12 pages of cuts that they wanted us to make in COUP 53, and if we didn't make those changes, they would sue us for defamation. We refused.
For some reason, he decided that he'd go ahead with what he kept calling the lost footage, the lost interview. Where is this lost interview?
When I did see it, I just said, to quote, "This is fucking bullshit."
Later on, I realized this was impossible when I began to go through what had happened with the End of Empire team. So I wrote to Taghi that I realized that I couldn't swear on the Bible that I had actually been present at a filmed interview with Derbyshire.
They refused to make any cuts including of the cameraman, who had by then retracted his whole testimony because he realized that he'd got in a muddle.
Probably the most damaging allegation in COUP 53 is that we, the End of Empire team, colluded with MI6, gave in to censorship, and cut out this man Derbyshire from our film.
It's very clear I was misled about the actual transcript. The director knew that I had it, knew that I'd used it for a long time. What he did not tell me was that he already had one from 2014.
In mid-September, ITV Archive withdrew their archive license for some 14 minutes of footage from End of Empire Iran, which Taghi had included in his film, because in their view, it put Granada itself and the End of Empire team into disrepute. Now, this was their decision. We knew nothing about it.
So the film has been re-released, and it includes a right to reply from us where we categorically assert that we never filmed Derbyshire and that we certainly didn't collude with any government pressure.
The trouble was that these small amendments actually did not in any way address any of our major concerns.
The impression remains that we are being dishonest and that we are covering up some form of government censorship. The idea of this is ludicrous, especially at Granada Television at that time, where we particularly prided ourselves on speaking truth to power.
The word I always use is integrity. That's really important to me when you're doing these kind of things. And this has none.
My main beef is that they've ignored the evidence. They now have the evidence and they've ignored it and they've not corrected the film.
The idea that this documentary gets awards is pretty frightening. It's kind of Trumpland, where fake material is accepted as fact, and it's simply untrue.
So as you see, the story continues. And the real question, I think, there is very significant material evidence to suggest this is actually filmed.
Well, that's true, although I'd like to say what I referred to a few minutes ago, which is that a tape recording was made of Derbyshire saying these words, admitting to the British government's involvement in the coup, admitting his own complicity in the murder of an Iranian general, and many other things as well. And a transcript was made of it. And the policy of End of Empire is this was a kind of deep throat background material that they used in their research. But on the face of it, you can't be off the record if a recording is made. Presidents have been brought down for tape recordings of equivalent things. So,
and intelligence officers know that. I know from experience.
No, as Stephen Dorrell quite correctly says in the film, no MI6 agent would allow himself to be recorded saying these things, because a tape recording is even more easy to fool around with than a video recording, especially given the technology in 1985. So my conclusion from that, along with things that we'll get to in a minute, is that at the time Derbyshire was talking on the record. He's saying outrageous things, but he is talking on the record.
And the fact is that as your film, yours and Taghi's film, is the main exhibit here in showing that audio interview together with the CIA fellow presents a coherent story of the coup, so why not use it?
Right, and as you might have seen in the film, when they do the pre-interview with Stephen Mead, they're especially interested in the Ashraf story, the story of the sister of the Shah. And not only are they interested in that, but Stephen Mead is good in capitals with an exclamation point. So let's just run this next clip, which I will narrate. Every good film is a documentary, and becomes more so with time. This is a great quote from French director Eric Romer, which certainly applies in the case of COUP 53. In fact, you might almost call its life after it was finished another whole film called COUP 53.1. Prior to that, Taghi and I worked together for 4 years, writing, shooting, and editing 532 hours of interviews, archive material, and animation. 14 minutes of that archive came from this program, End of Empire, Iran, which was broadcast in 1985. In researching that program, End of Empire interviewed this gentleman, Norman Derbyshire, who was head of the Iran station for MI6 in 1952 and 53. He's played in our film, as you've seen, by Rafe Fiennes. His interview was recorded on 4 tapes in late 1982, but nothing of it ever appeared in the finished film. What we didn't know at the time of shooting Rafe is that he actually looked very similar to Norman Derbyshire. Here's 2 photographs of them, both at age 29. COUP 53 premiered at Telluride in August of 2019, and then it went on to the London Film Festival, where it had 3 sold-out screenings, and played at all of the festivals that you see here over a 6-month period, which ended in March of 2020 because of the COVID epidemic. Despite the great reviews at the festivals, no distributors came forward to pick up our film. So on August 19th, 2020, we self-distributed COUP 53 through 118 theaters in the UK, USA, Ireland, and Canada. And it was universally acclaimed, 44 100% positive reviews from the mainstream press, giving us a certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, one of only 108 films in all of cinema history to have this distinction. 2 days later, August 21st, the producers of End of Empire, Brian Lapping and Norma Percy, threatened to sue us for defamation. Their claim was that COUP 53 implies that Derbyshire was filmed on the record and that the producers of End of Empire complied with the UK government's demand that he be removed. They say they never shot him and that they would never agree to a demand like that from the government. However, they never raised any objection against COUP 53 in the whole year after its debut at the Telluride Film Festival, including those 3 sold-out shows at the London Film Festival. To enforce their opinion, they sent us 12 pages of cuts and additions that they wanted us to make in COUP 53. And if we didn't agree to those changes, they would prosecute us for defamation. And also alert the motion picture academies in the US and the UK about their grievances toward us. In essence, what they wanted us to do was to remove all of cameraman Humphrey Trevelyan's 3 interviews, remove all of historical advisor Hidayat's interview, remove all of journalist Nigel Hawkes's interview, remove sections of MI6 author Stephen Dorrell's interview, and remove sections of researcher Alison Rupper's own interview. We refused. Shortly after that, we learned that ITV refused to license the renewal of 14 minutes of essential archive, and so we were forced to pull the film from distribution on the 14th of September 2020. A month later, we received this email from Brian Lapping, essentially saying, "You leave us with no option but to take further measures which will include legal action. And you will be aware of the implications of this for your reputation." On November 1st, 2020, this article appeared in The Observer. The makers of 1985 series End of Empire have blocked the release of lauded documentary COUP 53, claiming it damages their reputation. This was in the middle of 3 months of legal wrangling. Fortunately, we had the best legal minds on our side, working almost pro bono. And in the week before Christmas, we received the best Christmas present. End of Empire's threatened lawsuit was deemed without merit, and immediately ITV granted us access to the 14 minutes of archive. And on December 14th, 2020, COUP 53 went back online distribution. But we had lost 3 months of distribution because of the threat of this frivolous lawsuit. So, setting these legal issues aside, Brian Lapping, Norma Percy, and Alison Rupert maintain that no film of Derbyshire was ever shot, but they admit that 4 tapes of him were recorded and accurately transcribed. Derbyshire was recorded admitting British involvement in the coup, claiming to have run the coup for our side, admitting his involvement in the kidnapping, torture, and murder of an Iranian general, claiming to have signed the checks to pay for the coup, admitting BBC involvement in the coup, and speaking disrespectfully of the head of MI6 at the time. If you are an MI6 agent speaking off the record and only for deep background, you would not allow a recording to be made. If a recording is made of you, you are by definition on the record. The existence of such a recording makes deniability impossible. Presidents have been deposed on the basis of similar recordings. So I'd like to pose 3 questions among many. Why did Derbyshire agree to be recorded if he was speaking off the record, as End of Empire claim? Why did Norman's friend, CIA agent Stephen Meade, agree to be filmed on the record? And why were clips of Stephen Meade speaking openly about Derbyshire selected for End of Empire if Derbyshire was off the record? The interview that you see in COUP 53 is the only interview that Stephen Meade ever gave in his career as a CIA agent, never before or never since. And although it was filmed on the record for End of Empire, it did not appear in the program. As you know from watching the film, Norman Derbyshire and Stephen Meade are on a first-name basis, and Norman Derbyshire shares intimate recollections about Stephen Meade's love life, which might have involved the Shah's sister. If End of Empire approached Stephen Meade to give an interview about this activity, one of the first things he would have done would be to call his friend Norman and ask, "Norman, they want me to speak about the Ashraf mission. Have you gone on record about this?" And if Norman had said, "No, I just talked to them off the record for deep background," Stephen Meade would not have agreed to go on camera. So the existence of this interview with Stephen Meade raises the question of the corresponding interview with Norman Derbyshire. And then, why were clips of Stephen Meade speaking openly about Derbyshire selected for End of Empire if Derbyshire was off the record? And here I'd like to play this clip, which is an outtake from COUP 53, but it explains the investigation of the telltale splices in the original camera roll of Stephen Meade's interview. The great thing about analog, which is what we're looking at here, is that there is a record of what has been used and what has not been used. And when we work digitally, there is no trace of where we might have cut something. In the old days, a piece of film, you actually had to cut that piece out and use it, and if you later decided not to use it, you then put it back in the master roll from which it came. But there is a trace, fingerprints, that say this shot was in the film at one time. There you can see the tape. That line across the bottom of the frame is a piece of Scotch tape. So what I've done here is identified the clips that were used in End of Empire at one point. This clip was used, this clip was used, this clip was used, this and this. And here is Alison, 35 years ago, asking Stephen Meade about Norman Derbyshire.
What kind of a man was Norman Derbyshire?
Cut.
Norman Derbyshire was a very competent
individual. He had a lot of experience. He spoke Farsi fluently, French, and what other languages I don't know. But he was a very capable operator.
And cut. The rules of the game are that if somebody talks about somebody, you have to have reference to that person. So we have this very long transcript of an interview with Norman Derbyshire, which has been cut up. And here we have a roll of work print of Stephen Mead talking about Derbyshire, which has been similarly cut up. So that begs the question, what happened to Norman Derbyshire?
I must say, there really does appear to be no answer. You know, when I looked at this clip, and actually there's a longer version of the stuff from Granada, and then looked at your response, that's a material argument that doesn't seem to have a response. That is, if they were at some point in the film using the clip of Stephen Mead talking about Derbyshire, how is it that Derbyshire was never filmed and was never going to be in the film?
Exactly.
Right? On the other hand, one of the interesting things to me about the people from End of Empire seem very offended and very aggressive about this. And they seem as if their professional bona fides have been threatened. And some of them seem to believe what they're saying. And to me, that's another lesson in how strange history is, that you can basically convince yourself 35 years later. I mean, because that's what struck me, that I'm not saying that they are right. I'm saying that they've convinced themselves that they're right.
Well, you have to remember that this film was in circuit all over the world at festivals for a year, and there was not a peep of problem from End of Empire. It was only when it was released commercially and started getting these 4-star, 5-star reviews that the panic set in, and they started this campaign, which is still continuing to this day. I mean, the other thing to mention is, as you saw, Steve and Norman are first-name people. This is the only on-camera, on-the-record interview that the man who set up SAVAK for President Eisenhower ever gave. Now, when End of Empire approached him to do an interview, what's the first thing he's going to do? He's going to call Norman, his friend, and say, Norman, these people are asking me to go on camera to talk about Ashraf and other things. Is this legit? Have you done an interview? Are you on camera? If Norman said, no, I just gave them a deep throat background. It should never be used. You're on your own. Why would Stephen Mead, this interview was done at the Pentagon, why would Stephen Mead agree to make this testimony? It's quite likely that Norman said, no, it's good. I went on camera and I did this. So you can too.
Derbyshire was forced out, right? He had, if I remember rightly, wasn't he forced out early? That is, pushed out of the service? Didn't he have some reasons for possibly wanting to do an interview like this?
Yes, Derbyshire was 55 when he was forced into early retirement by the incoming Thatcher government that was taking a much more hardline attitude towards revelations about the inner workings of the Secret Service, both MI5 and MI6.
So how long after he was forced out did he do the interview?
4 years.
That's, speaking as a journalist, that's the kind of person you want to find. The bitter person who wants to claim credit for their career.
We also contacted his daughter and other members of his family subsequent to making the film, and he led a troubled life subsequent. He had more and more serious alcohol problems. When he visited relations, they had to lock up the booze in the cabinet.
And that transcript, it's 14 pages, you said, single space, so that's, 7,500 words? I mean, that is a very long interview.
Well, it works out to be about 40 minutes of speech.
As I say, quite a long interview for an intelligence officer to give.
Well, it's long, but it's not as long as pre-interview things went. In other words, when you're sussing out somebody, there's a lot of wrong paths that have to be corrected. This interview is absolutely following a script. Another piece of evidence is the fact that the question about Norman Derbyshire, about the murder of Afshartuz, the general, is asked, it's a bolt out of the blue that is asked without any preparation. There's no identifying who this man is, and Derbyshire's answer is definitively yes, but. In other words, he has a pre-packaged interview. He doesn't go, how did you know about Afshartuz? Or, well, who are you talking about? You know, there's no pussyfooting. It's everything has been prearranged. He has seen these questions before this interview. So the idea that this is a pre-interview where he doesn't know what is going to happen is ridiculous.
So all of which suggests that there either was a pre-interview or they at least gave him a list of questions that he knew about it.
I'm sure there was a pre-interview that has disappeared.
Well, this, by the way, as a matter of documents, are these things going to somewhere like the National Security Archive?
This 14-page interview we gave this interview to the National Security Archive, to Malcolm Byrne. So if you go to the NSA at George Washington University, just online, you can see this interview in its full glory.
That is great. I have one more question, then we'll open it up to the crowd, which is simply to ask you as a matter of you're obviously a co-writer on the film, but as a matter of editing, we're here, these past, now the third night, talking to you in your capacity as an editor and a filmmaker. What were the challenges of this film, putting it together as an editor, that were distinctive?
The sheer volume of the material that came in as we were putting it. Taghi would go off and shoot new interviews. We would continually find new stuff in archives. And so in the end, it was 532 hours of material that had to be boiled down to what you see here, which is 2 hours. So that alone is a challenge. The other thing is because it's a moving target, we didn't know where the film was going to go. It followed a very sinuous path to the final version that you see here, with many detours. We had other ideas about how the film would tell itself. One of the other big revelations at the time was the, what's it called? The Frost Report, the Foreign Relations of the United States, which was instituted by Abraham Lincoln during Lincoln's presidency and continued. But the British government forced the American government to suppress the events relating to this part of history from the Frost Report in 1980s, 1970s. And it was only released while we were making this film. So we thought, this may be the big thing. It is big, but Derbyshire was bigger.
It strikes me that it would be very useful to have a book to go with this film that have some of these archival material. I hope that happens. Let us throw it open to the floor. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wait 1 second. We
sorry.
have mics, and so here's
Wait
one
for the
on
microphone.
your side.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for this amazing panel. I'm glad you overcame your deep shyness to enter the film. That's humor. But on a note for just thinking about, if we were to make this as a fiction film, the condescension of so many of the participants is just jumping off the screen, from the gardener in Adaban who says if they looked at us with disdain, that would have been a lot. They've treated us like animals, about the British, and the disdain between the American and the British counterparts. I feel this like rivalry about these men and the kind of bad taste of Derbyshire speaking of Mead's bad taste in women and sort of the, consorting with the Shah's sister. So I'm wondering for Mr. Murch, if you were to cast in a fiction film a storyline of this male rivalry, these deep condescending people who try to make an empire deep in the heart of Iran, what would that story be?
I think that's a question for Taghi, because Taghi was originally going to make this as a dramatic reenactment of the events. So.
Just wait a second for the mic here. There it is.
No, I'll film myself. I do that quite a lot. When I started making this film back in 2009, it was going to be my first fiction film and my first leap from documentary into fiction. In fact, I met Stephen Kinzer to buy the options, the movie option for All the Shah's Men. But when we started researching and I found the first interviewee I filmed, which was Mossadegh's bodyguard, he was so eloquent, he was so vivid, he was so incredibly compelling in his testimony that I left the house after the interview and I thought, why would I get an actor to be this guy? He's amazing and he's alive and he was there in the house on the day the tanks were firing. So I thought, ditch the fiction idea and go for the documentary. And that's how, but the great thing is, although we haven't got a distributor and I'm broke and all the money has been spent on legal fees, all the money that we made in the box office, we have been approached for fiction rights now. So it may well happen. It may go back full circle. Yeah, that's the answer.
I just have to add, I thought what you said, the questioner, what you said about this reeking of condescension, it's a really vivid picture of the imperial era and the Cold War era that came out of it. You see, I'd like to show it to students simply to show them where the US and the Cold War came from, because it's very vivid, it seems to me, in that connection, and also that beautiful passage with the boxes that show all the different coups, which I assume you cut together. Bravo.
This is also, these interviews were done 30 years after the events because of the 30-year rule or whatever it was. And so if you find these people condescending now, think what they were like 30 years earlier.
So there's a question all the way in the back. Can you all see who it is back there? Okay.
Hi there. I'm curious if you received any similar response from the American or Iranian governments. And also, why do you think that the Brits were so adamant about suppressing this while the Americans were so brazen about how they were talking about it?
We showed the film at Telluride, and Mark did a very similar event that he's doing today. And after the screening, I was packing up my toolkit, and people were leaving the theater, and a man hung around while I was working on, and I looked up, and he handed me something. He held out his hand, and I shook his hand, and there was something in my hand at the end. And it was a challenge coin from the CIA, which they give to people whom they think have done a good job for something. And so,
I remember this.
Right. And we were talking to Tom Luddy, organizer of Telluride, a few months later, and he and Julie said, "Oh yeah, that's Hank. He's a retired CIA operative who lives in Telluride." And we also showed the film in Middlesbrough, which is known as Spooksville because it's just outside of Langley. And many retired CIA people were there. They came to see the film, and there was lots of applause and slapping of backs. I think mainly because they were glad that we were outing the British, and because they've been burdening themselves with the sole responsibility of this, and now this was another part of the story was being told.
So there's a question right there, and are there any others?
Thank you so much. Just such a fabulous film. I hate to leave the subject matter of it, but I'd love to hear anything that either of you has to say about the animation, which was just over the top, and anything you'd have to say will be most interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, we had the problem that the events of this coup happened in 1953, not in 2013. If it had happened then, we would have had iPhone footage, smartphone footage, thousands of hours of material. But 1953, Iran, at night, there was just no visual material for this. So we had the verbal reports of Musa Mehran and Ardashir Zahedi and the butcher who was one of the people in the trucks. We had that testimony and the testimony of Mossadegh's nephew. So would we just cut to them talking? And then it was Taghi's brother, Amir, who had seen some of this kind of impressionistic animation. And he said, why don't you consider that? And we immediately thought that's a very good idea. The woman who did this, we went up to Cambridge to talk to her, and she was involved in another project. She was also pregnant, and the way she worked would take a long time, and it was not flexible. And then luckily through various contacts, we found Martin Pick, who does the same thing but does it digitally. And he works very quickly and is very flexible. And that's the result that you see. So we wanted not to fall into the uncanny valley, to make you think, is this what it really looked like? So it has this quivery, memorial kind of fragmentary quality to it that perhaps evokes what's happening in the person's brain as they're trying to remember something. But at least it's something visual that allows us to triangulate and support the verbal testimony of the person who's talking.
I must say, watching it again, one of the great moments is, I forget who says, is it Bakhtiar, who says he should have acted immediately?
Yeah.
And which is an irony that he's saying that, needless to say, was later prime minister, the last prime minister before Khomeini. But it really captures how dramatic and unpredictable a coup can be when it gets down to the day-to-day and what happens. There's a mystery still at the heart of it.
Yeah, I think part of the explanation is Mossadegh's personality. He really believed in democracy. That's why he tolerated the Tudeh party, the Communist Party, which was, as indicated, it was not a big thing in Iran. But he also still had fond memories of the United States from his visit during Truman administration. And I don't think he fully grasped the big shift that had happened with the Eisenhower presidency, and particularly the coming to power of the two Dulles brothers as Secretary of State and head of the CIA.
So he didn't realize the danger he was in.
Right. Not fully.
So I'm sorry, we need to close because of the time.
No.
Okay, so we'll ask this question and then Taghi has something to say.
Just for working off the Eisenhower piece, I was surprised because we've seen Eisenhower so often, the clips about the military-industrial complex, and then to see it when he was embracing covert action, I guess I hadn't really seen any of that or read about that. Do you find right now, with a lot of the efforts by our own current administration, Republican, Democrats, doesn't seem to matter, similar in this efforts toward covert action with Venezuela, with demonizing these different leaders, apparently where there's mostly oil?
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that Eisenhower inherited the Korean War. And there were more people dying in Korea per week than ever died in Vietnam. And as the film indicates, there were people, including General MacArthur and General LeMay, who were saying, drop the A-bomb on them. So it was a terribly hot war that was on the verge of igniting a world war. So Eisenhower, as quickly as possible, came to the truce agreement in Korea in the beginning of August in 1953, just almost simultaneously with this coup, which happened late in August. And the coup was like a gift from the gods in the sense that, as Stephen Kinzer says, we changed the whole regime of a country to one favorable to us, and no Americans were killed. It didn't cost very much, and presto changeo. So this was a blessing, I think, to Eisenhower compared to what the situation was in Korea. I mean, there's that wonderful cartoon that goes from a globe looking with distress at Korea and then swirling to Iran. And, you know, that was 1953, and it's like something from today. So he did embrace covert action. This was the first time the CIA had gone off campus, so to speak, to destabilize a foreign government in another hemisphere. As Mark knows well, there was historically lots of activity in Latin America, not by the CIA necessarily, but by the armed forces. And this, as David Talbot says, it lit a light bulb. Oh, we can do this. Let's try it in Guatemala. And then that led to the situation in Vietnam in 1955 with Diem. And so it became a pathway that seemed to be less catastrophic than a full-on war like the Korean War.
Okay, I've sat through a lot of Q&As after COUP 53. This is definitely the best we've ever had, thanks to Walter and Mark Danner. I said earlier that it was a miracle that I got Walter to work on this film, and it's still the most incredible professional, creative, and personal experience I've had as a filmmaker. But that miracle wouldn't have been possible without our lead investor and executive producer, Jerry Orstrom, who I'm glad to say is actually here, and I have to acknowledge Jerry's contribution. I wouldn't have met Walter were it not for Jerry. I was in New York on the 19th of August 2012 on a Sunday. I was in Union Square somewhere. Jerry calls me saying, Taghi, what are you doing? I said, I'm just going to pack my bags. I've got a flight back to London. He says, oh, well, it's a pity. Walter Murch is coming to my apartment to read from his new book, translation from an obscure Italian poet into English. That's Walter Murch for you. And I say, wait, Jerry, are you talking about the Walter Murch? He says, yeah. I'm changing my flight. And that's how it happened. And then Jerry, having introduced me to Walter at his book party, then came in on the film as an investor way before we had an idea what it was going to be like and how it was going to happen and all that. He put his faith in us. He's been the most incredible supporter. This film is existing because of Jerry. And he even flew from New York, especially just to be here for this film. So thank you, Jerry.
You know, it's always best to end when there's still things to say so that we'll know we'll continue to be talking and having conversations. So I want to thank all of you for all your reflections and thoughts and questions. I want to thank Mark Danner for his observations. And then I want to thank Walter Murch again for the 3 weeks we spent with him. They've been so special, informative, shifting how we look at cinema, and very generous. Thank you so much.